And of course, I missed the recording, but I'm assuming Neil is taking notes. So Raphael just introduced himself as the CFO of District 65. Kendra, would you introduce yourself?
Kendra Williams, CFO for Evanston Township High School, District 202.
Thank you. Jeff, would you introduce yourself?
Jeff Gossero, Budget Manager at Oakton Community College.
Great. So those are the members of the Joint Review Board who are in attendance. We are not in attendance today is Cook County, and we'll keep track to see if they do join us. Typically, the Economic Development Agency of Cook County joins us. The next item on the agenda, item number 3, is the selection of the public member. Mayor Biss and I discussed the public member of the Joint Review Board should have some level of consistency, and he had recommended that we invite Lisa Deacon, to invite the person who serves as a public member on the Economic Development Committee to serve as the annual meeting attendee for the community member position. So in this case, this year, and I think for the next 2 years, fingers crossed, I would like to introduce Lisa Deacon as the community member for the Joint Review Board.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Thank you. In the past, we've had other community members serving on joint review boards for specific TIFs that were created. For the annual meeting, it's slightly different. The state requires that we assign a general member of the community, so we've done that. Item number 4 on the agenda, selection of a chairperson. To keep things easy, I'd like to volunteer just to continue to chair the agenda proceedings. If somebody else would rather volunteer to lead the meeting, we can take a vote on that. But if you're satisfied with me volunteering as the Joint Review Board Chair on behalf of the city, I will gladly take that on to the finish line. Are we okay with that? Raphael? Kendra? Okay.
Yes.
All right. So with that said, again, this is an informational meeting, and I'll have our tax increment financing consultant describe the purpose of the meeting and kind of how it feels slightly less formal than a city council. Staff would not normally be leading agenda meetings, nor would staff of each of the organizations be attending. So I'll have I think is it Irina or Nina who are going to be presenting?
I can do it.
Thank you. So this is item number 5 on the agenda, review of the Joint Review Board procedures and duties.
Okay, I'm Irina with K. McKenna. We prepared the annual TIF reports. The annual ATR reports are required by state statute and are pretty much relegated by the Illinois State Comptroller's Office. The template is provided every year by the State Comptroller, and the reports were filed and accepted by that office. Each report contains, and this will be for all of them, I'm not going to repeat this, but each report contains the certification by the TIF administrator, who is Hitesh, certification by the mayor, which is attachment B, certification by the attorney, which is attachment C, the audit, which is attachment K, and then at the very last page is the auditor's opinion, which is attachment L. In this case, you will find the reports are a little bit lengthy, and that's because, and Hitesh will agree with me, the auditor told us we needed to attach the entire audit as opposed to just pieces of it. So oftentimes we would just take certain pages out and attach that. We are not allowed to do that, so I apologize. They are very long. And that's it. Anybody have any questions?
I have in the chat put the link that you probably all found, because those who are public members of the community, because you found us here on the Google Meet. So if you weren't able to find the packet, I've sent the link and you can download the packet. And you'll see that it's a very kind of structured template format. As Irina said, that the state requires that we complete every year. And what I'd like to do, I'd like to do one of two things. One, we could ask for public comment now that we've had kind of a description of why we're meeting and an introduction of the members, or I'll leave it up to those in attendance. You could also ask questions at the end, but I'll open it up now for public comment based on the order I see people on the screen. Okay, well, Ms. Conley has raised her hand. So Ms. Conley, why don't you go ahead and make your public comment, and then I'll go through the rest of the list that I see before me.
Thank you. My name is Tricia Conley, and I live in the 2nd Ward. A couple of things. One, I would like to inquire about funds taken from the West End TIF to fund the 5th Ward projects. If we could get a total of how much has been taken in that. And the other question connected to that is, when is that going to be reinstated to the West End TIF? What is the policy on that? And the last thing I have is, what is the plan for having community members part of the planning for fund expenditure in each TIF? It is a little unsettling that, you know, projects come forward and it's decided that TIF is going to be used, but there hasn't been any community input in those particular wards or TIF area to weigh in on what they feel is the most important projects for their area. Thank you.
Because this is not a typical format of a council meeting, I'll try to answer some of those questions as quickly as possible. First of all, the city council approved porting or borrowing money from the West Evanston TIF. Sorry, from the 5/5. Let me restate this. The city council approved porting money from the West Evanston TIF to the 5/5 TIF. Probably have to say this again one more time. I'm going to try to slow down. The city council approved porting funds for the Emerson and Jackson project and the Soul and Smoke restaurant project, both of which are in the 5/5 TIF. The city council approved porting money from the West Evanston TIF to the 5/5 TIF. And the total of that, I believe, was $650,000 for Soul and Smoke for renovations to their restaurant. And then I believe it was a similar value for the Emerson and Jackson acquisition. Now I'd have to go back and it's not before me right now. I don't have the number in front of me, but those are the two projects. So as of right now, that's the extent of the quote unquote borrowing. It's up to the city council to move that money back to the 5/5 TIF, and I believe that's the intent. And then the other question you had was, when are the TIF task force going to be implemented? And I know Councilmember Burns has been working with Mayor Biss on identifying members of the community to serve on that. So that information is with Councilmember Burns. I don't believe he's on this call. If you see him, I don't see him. So that's where that is. I know that's in motion. I know there was a resolution passed to require that for the 5/5 TIF, and I believe that the intent is to implement that process for all the TIFs. And I know that the Chicago Main TIF had that as a requirement as well. Let's see, Mr. Vasilko has his hand raised.
I don't want to monopolize. I've got a few questions. I may ask a couple and then come back later, but according to the Cook County Assessor, this is in a report going back maybe a month or two, was quoted as saying that TIFs are a backdoor tax increase on communities. TIFs raise property taxes on average about 11%, although the impact varies depending on how widely TIFs are used in a given community. I guess I'd like some reaction to that, since Cook County Assessor is telling us one thing and our Evanston community loves to have TIFs, including the largest one, the 5/5 TIF. And regarding that 5/5 TIF, I understand recently that there is a movement to not only build a school using the 5/5 TIF, but to build a community center on the same property. And I'd like confirmation that that money is all coming from the TIF, that it's not going to be a future tax increase. So let's start with those two questions.
Sure. So the question you asked Mr. Vassilko about tax, I mean, that sounds more like an indictment of TIF, so to speak. I'm not quite sure. I mean, that's more of a kind of a longer study that would be required. I don't know. Hitesh, has the city ever conducted a study that confirms what the assessor implied or what Mr. Vassilko is repeating from the assessors?
Yeah, thank you, Paul, and good afternoon again. I mean, I don't know. You're right. Yeah, it is like and it depends on the each TIF, how good, bad, success, and what's the demographic of that. One thing in principle, what happens is if the TIF doing good, increased EAV in TIF means the reduced EAV for the general. But at the same time, I mean, sometimes we add the incremental value because of the development, and we take the pressure out of some of the other things. Like when we do the water project, sewer thing, sidewalks, streets in the TIF, with the TIF money, that means there's a less burden on our water fund to raise the rate, or sewer fund, or a less burden on CIP fund to borrow the money for streets and sidewalks and curbs. So in the long run, I think it is good for the city. It is good for the residents that the TIF and the TIF success ultimately helps the city and the residents as a whole.
I'll forward that article to you.
Yes, thank you.
Paul, this is Raphael. There was a question asked about funding for the Fifth Ward School, where the TIF funds will be used for the construction of the Fifth Ward School.
Right. My answer was going to be, I'm going to ask Raphael, but I don't think that's.
So I figured you were going to do that, Paul. So I'll just jump in. The funding for the Fifth Ward School will not be coming from the 5/5 TIF. The funding for that was actually secured once the board approved the construction of a new school. And the funding is from the issuance of lease certificate, which was done with the underlying financial strength of District 65 finances. And the district was able to secure $40 million, which will be used to build that school. Now, that answers your question, but I guess I want to answer, I know before the 5/5 TIF was established, there were negotiations between District 65 and District 202 about what is called in lieu of payment, which, is essentially is that because the TIF has been established, there's a possibility that revenue that we may get, but for the TIF, there will be an attempt to get some of those revenue to those two school districts. And we negotiated and we reached an agreement. And so to answer your question, no, the 5/5 TIF is not going to be used to fund the new school with secure funding, through the issuance of a lease certificate to build the school. But we did negotiate at 202 and 65, which is common practice for some of the projected revenue that we would not get for that to be sent back to those two districts. I don't know if that answers your question, Mr. Vasil.
Does that include a potential community center? Is that one and the same thing?
Now, the community center, that is the city of Evanston's project. District 65 project is exclusively the construction of a new school in the 5th Ward.
Right. So Mr. Vasilko, I think it was you who asked that question. I don't believe the city council has. I don't think we're at any point where we've decided how, if Fleetwood Jourdain is to be rebuilt, how it would be funded. We're just not there yet. But theoretically, yes, it could be. Just putting it out there. I mean, I don't think that decision has been made. Are there any other questions or public comments? There will be time at the end, like I said, to ask questions and amongst the board members and also members of the public. There are members of the media on the call, like as in past experience. Typically, we've had our local media covering, and I appreciate you attending. Okay, so again, a little bit awkwardly, we're shifting back out of public comment to the meeting agenda. Looking for a motion to approve the minutes of the December 2021 meeting. I know some of you were not on this board at that time, so you could recuse yourself, but really just looking for a voice vote on approval of the minutes. Is there a motion for that?
I make a motion.
Thank you. Second that? Is there somebody to second it, considering we have an entirely new group?
Seconded it.
Thank you. So if we can move approval, move forward with a vote on this, I would ask all those in favor say yay.
Yay.
Are anybody opposed, or are there any changes or recusals?
Paul, I'll recuse myself as I was not a member
Thank
at
you.
that time.
Anybody else?
I'll do the same.
Thank you, Kendra. Thank you. So let's go on to the next, that item passed, by the way. Next item on the agenda is why we're here, review of the annual reports. And again, we're focused on the year 2021. So we'll be talking a lot about things from the 2021 reports. A lot has happened in 2022, but we'll talk a little bit about that as we're talking about what's happening today. But as it relates to the reports, traditionally what we've done is we've had our consultant just give a brief update on the reports. I think what we're going to do today, based on the fact that Irina is struggling with a bit of an illness, and I really appreciate her being committed to being on the call today. Hitesh and I are going to step through, I'm going to go through my presentation and we'll give little updates on each of the reports. Does that work for you, Irina?
Yes. Yeah, that's fine.
Are there any formalities in terms of how we review the reports that the state requires?
No, the state doesn't require anything except for minutes to be, is for you to hold this JRB and that's it. And for you to have minutes from that should be adopted as you did.
Great. So what I will do is I will open up the presentation and we'll go through each of the TIFs. And somebody give me a thumbs up that you can see this. All right, thank you. And is it a full screen? Yes. Okay. So again, this is the meeting of the Joint Review Board. I'm showing you a citywide map that shows in the solid line, the solid polygons are actually the TIF districts, and then those boundary areas like this red and yellow and orange area, those are the special service areas that have nothing to do with TIF. They're just, this map is a map we use at the city to show our economic development areas. And we'll go through each of those TIF districts relatively quickly. So again, the state of Illinois requires this. The state act defines membership and the appointed representatives. These, for the annual meeting, these are the 5 members that are invited to attend. There is no quorum required for this meeting, although we do all in our power to make sure we have quorum available. And we also follow Open Meetings Act as closely as possible on this, although that's not a state requirement. So the point of this is to review the TIF finances and look at the TIF funded activities. Again, a close-up of the 5 active TIF districts. Howard Ridge is our oldest of the existing. That's along Howard. Let's just go through them. You'll see here in a moment. Hitesh, I'll ask you to back me up on each of these yellow boxes on the slides. But what I will show, is first of all, that you can see on the description here that the Howard Street TIF goes from the CTA tracks west all the way to what is commonly known as the U.S. Bank property, just west of Asbury or Western, depending on which side of the street you're on. That was established in 2003. And Hitesh, do you want to take over the finances part of this?
Paul, do you want me to cover that last slide, which is all the financials numbers after you go through the project?
Sure,
that might be helpful.
Okay, we'll do that. That's how we'll do it.
Yep.
So just a reminder, we don't have 2021 data. So unfortunately, because of the situation with tax bills coming in late, and so
Yeah, Paul, the 2021 TIF data will not be available for some weeks.
right. So we're in a bit of a disadvantage for that, but what we will do is we'll update all of this information once we start collecting. Okay, so
Well, and the EAV that's in the report is the 2020. There's the base EAV is on section 6. The base EAV and the new EAV, that's tax year 2020, and that is correct because it's always in arrears.
yes.
But yeah, the new data is not available.
Okay. So let's go on. And I wanted these are just close-ups so you can kind of see, and we'll make this presentation available on the website as well. Wanted everybody to see what properties are in it. And again, we're talking about really 2021 information, and periodically I'll bring in current stuff, but this is the newest development on Howard. This was now known as the Anne Rainey Apartments, but it was developed by CJE Senior Life Adult Services Center. $25 million project, and that's really the extent of development on Howard Street. Remember, we're also coming out of a pandemic-induced recession, so to speak. The West Evanston TIF, kind of a harder map to see, so I'm going to stretch it out amongst 3 different slides. You'll notice that it starts way north here on Simpson and travels kind of in a southwesterly direction down to roughly Main Street or Greenleaf. This is the abandoned Mayfair line. It was created in 2005. There's just a few years left on this TIF district. I think 2028 is the expiration date. But again, a close-up, public storage is here near the Civic Center. This is an older map with what formerly was an industrial site that is now Emerson Square affordable housing development. This is the Robinson property down here. I'm assuming, by the way, that you can see my arrow moving around. This site is owned by the post office. This is Tape Coat. And then we get further south toward the high school at Church and Dodge, where we have some development activity that I'll try to show on the next slide. Here's ETHS. City Council just approved for year 2022 TIF money that will not be spent until 2023 at the corner of Church and Dodge for Clarence and Wendy Weaver, who are going to be renovating acquiring and renovating their mixed use apartment building. First floor has around 5 or 6 retailers, and then they're going to convert the 4 apartments above into 6 affordable units. And then this vacant lot here is going to be assembled with these 2 sites here for residential, affordable, mixed income, affordable development. And then as we travel southwest, city staff is working on potentially, we've acquired some of these properties along this rail line and possibly an early phase discussion of how do we create connections for pedestrians and cyclists along Davis Street. How do we think about how do we expand Mason Park and things like that. And then as we go south of Lake Street, there's some industrial property here. Really, especially north of Greenwood in this area, Continental Construction. There's an opportunity there to think about how we improve that site. And then going south of, this is Greenwood here, but this is kind of built out. And if you go down south of Dempster, you've got this is the shopping center that has its own TIF district we'll talk about in a second. But this is the industrial area, former Sentinel Radio factory here at Hartree. Temperance Brewing is there now, along with Goldfish Swim School and Erie Health. There are some public works projects planned in this area over the next couple of years. We'll see more about that. But 2021, there really wasn't any activity. This is kind of a northwest view, standing with our backs kind of toward Mason Park. But this is the site. City owns a former gas station that would be redeveloped as mixed income affordable housing. It's under contract with HODC and the neighboring Mount Pisgah Church. Going on to the next TIF, TIF district number 7 is the Evanston Plaza Shopping Center. This was created right around the time that Dominic's announced that they were departing the center. The center had high vacancies, and we really thought that this might be the opportunity to create kind of a West End, call it a town center or a business district, because we weren't sure that in the year 2020 or 2016 at the time, by the time Valley came back around, that a shopping center would be viable in the economic retail world that we're in today. Fortunately, Valley invested, fixed up the Dominic's property. We did invest $2 million in TIF. We've heard from the community about that and how we approach that. And in the future, we're baking in ways that we will benefit from projects that leverage TIF to then, in this case, double the value of their property. So we take that seriously, and that was something that I think some of the current council members have been real leaders on. So, but with that said, the $2 million investment resulted in improvements to the Valley storefront, the facade, and the structure itself as they redeveloped it into a Valley store. And then they've done a great job really getting it almost to 100% leased, even in an environment where it's difficult to fill stripped shopping centers like this one. And again, this is probably the same slide. I don't think I changed any photos on this. It's the same group of stores that were there last year when we discussed, but Valley being the anchor tenant of that facility. And they no longer own it, but they obviously still own the grocery store, and they're an important community partner. This is what I referenced earlier, where the shopping center sold for 36 when I believe the previous owners paid half that. So being a little more entrepreneurial and being responsible with taxpayer dollars. In the future, we're drafting all of our development agreements will allow us to participate in the upside of a sale if something like this were to occur again. And again, remember, we can have a discussion about this stuff when we get to the end. The Chicago Main TIF, this was created in 2013. If you look at this map on the right, you can see the full extent of the map. When you create a TIF district, you cannot split parcels, tax parcels. You have to incorporate the entirety of that parcel. So unfortunately, in this case, the rail line extended from Dempster all the way down to Oakton. So we had to include that. There's no plan to include any rail improvements. It was only done as a way to have a contiguous boundary without splitting pins. So really the focus is on the map on the left, which is this area that starts around the lumber yard on the north, going south to essentially the south side of Madison Street, which is mostly the Main and Chicago or Main and Custer shopping district. The key investment. Well, let me take this back. On this corner, there's not a building footprint here because when this map was created, the building didn't exist. But at the time, the city council approved, I believe it was $2 million a TIF investment in the residential project. I could be wrong. Somebody might correct me. It might be $1 million. It was 8 years ago. I've forgotten. But it helped offset some of the cost of requiring office in the building. That was a decision made back then. So that has been the only investment outside of the water main repair that occurred 2 years ago. And then this year we took a break from construction. And then next year we begin the complete replacement of the streetscape from storefront wall to storefront wall. So new sidewalks, curb, gutter, building out the sidewalks with our new standard of three row brick ribbon, concrete, lighting, trees, crosswalks, stuff like that. This image here is showing the area between Sherman Avenue on the west and Custer or the rail line to the east, but it also includes the area east of the tracks all the way to Hinman. And then this picture on the bottom is the Vogue Fabrics property, and I'll give you a zoom in on this. This is under construction currently. They did demo and poured caissons a few weeks ago, and the building remains under construction even in the cold weather. This is going to be a transformational project on the west end of Main Street because it's going to add 120 units. So figure close to 200 people living on that corner who will then go down their elevator and grab coffee or grab a bite to eat. So this is a game changer. Maybe shop at the bookstore across the street, Squeeze Box. It's an important project. It's going to generate significant increment for the TIF district, which could then be reinvested in the infrastructure. And then finally, City Council approved the creation of the 5/5 TIF district. And again, it's one of these weird rail line pins that drags all the way up to Central Street. There's not a plan at all to do any work north of the canal. The concentrated activity area is in the 5th Ward with I think a couple of parcels that lingered in from the 2nd Ward, including the Truly building. That Truly property and I'm going to stress any potential development that may occur on the Civic Center site. That does not mean that it is going to. I'm just saying over the next 23 years, if the city council decides that something happens there, that increment, which today is 0, whatever that future increment would essentially be pushed under the railroad tracks here into the heart of the 5th Ward. And yes, you'll see on this map that Foster Field, Fleetwood, and Family Focus are in the TIF district, but that does not necessarily mean that TIF will be used for those projects. I'll also point out that what's currently called the Hill Arts kind of business district is in the TIF. I can zoom in. It's in the TIF. And then when you look south of Simpson, you'll see that there's a significant number of housing units, including the Emerson Jackson properties that the city acquired, that are in the TIF. If you look at the origins of the TIF district, it was really meant to help support affordable housing development and renovation. So a lot of these single family homes and small apartment buildings could be improved with TIF. And that also goes for the residential over here at Dewey and Simpson. So I said a lot of words. And by the way, this green area is where the West Evanston TIF kind of comes in and is tucked into or wrapped around by the 5/5 TIF, which allows that porting or borrowing from one or another. This was this year's project, not a 2021 project. I'm just giving you a heads up on what's happening. It'll fund in 2023. The council approved it on December 9th or 12th. I can't remember the date. This is a major expansion for Soul and Smoke. It's a $1.7 million project. The city council approved $675,000 in leasehold improvements to help them expand from this area, which is their production catering warehouse, into a full-fledged restaurant that will hopefully pay back the city, so to speak, through increment in close in future years. Again, this is another conceptual image of the expansion along Payne Street, where they're using sorry, this actually may be on Ashland. This is using the public parkway for dining. I wanted to point out that this year, not in 2021, but 2022, and you'll see this acquisition project will appear in the 2022 annual reports that we'll discuss next year. But just from a development perspective, these are the 7 parcels that we acquired at Emerson and Jackson that will either be sold or contributed to a future mixed income affordable housing project to be determined. The city is also working on finalizing recommending a demolition contractor to demolish the housing, clear the site, level it, grass it over in the spring, and then we'll have a nice clean site ready for development. Take the fences down sometime in the spring. Here's what they look like. If you needed a reminder, something I see quite frequently and definitely an eyesore. So we're looking forward to moving forward with that. And this block, this is the Jackson side of the project. So now I'll stop talking and I'll invite Hitesh in to give an update on the numbers.
Okay, thank you very much, Paul. I would just go through, this summary sheet. And I think, as previously mentioned, we do not have 2021 numbers yet. So some of those EAV numbers you see here are from 2020. Besides that, I have put the fund balance and cash balance based on our 2021 annual comprehensive audit report, as well as the debt outstanding in each of the TIPs. So it's like a kind of a good summary worksheet for all the 4 TIPs. If you look at the first line, it's the Harvard Ridge TIF with the total EAV of 2020 again. Then the next is the frozen EAV columns. We have the $15 million incremental, and the debt is $3.3 million outstanding as of this December. So after the principal payment as of 12/1 this year. The next line, West Evanston, again, incremental of $22 million in the West Evanston. There is no debt in West Evanston TIF. Chicago, Maine, net incremental of $14.2 million and the debt of $2.5 million. And the last one is the Dempster Dodge, where we issued the bond to, along with, I think, Chicago, Maine, has a debt of $1.7 million and the incremental value of around $3.5 million. In the bottom section, it's more like an operating number, the revenues for each year. So you would see the first column for TIF revenues 21, TIF revenues year-to-date 22, and again, this is only one installment. We are still waiting for the second installment. It has started trickling in, so hopefully we would have all the numbers in next month. But you would see the numbers there in the second column, which is roughly kind of a 50% of our expected numbers for the 22. The fund balance and the cash balance, the third column and the fourth column, to give a better picture of the each TIF. City of Evanston, Harvard Ridge has around 2.6 in fund balance as of the last audit report and 2.8 in a cash. West Evanston is a little higher than even Harvard Ridge at $3.2 million in the fund balance and cash balance. Chicago, Maine, little under $1 million in both fund balance and cash balance. And finally, the Dempster Dodge, $158,000 in the year-to-date revenues for this year and $325,000 in the fund balance and cash balance. My notes highlighted again there, 2021 year is not available, as well as there is no second installment in these numbers. Any other questions for any of these numbers?
Atash, it's Raphael. Just a quick question. It would be helpful. I saw a transfer out in the financial. It would be helpful to explain to us what the transfer outs were for.
I mean, do you have any specific fund, or is it?
Yeah, for example, Chicago, Maine, I saw a transfer out of 1.5 mil there.
Let's see. It is.
So,
and you're talking about the 21 audit reports?
Yeah, Raphael, can you reference which page number in the packet so those attending can look at it?
Yeah, hold on, give me a second.
I'm sorry, I thought you had it right before you. I'm sorry.
No, I didn't. I took notes from when I was reading it over the weekend. And hold on, I'll be able to. So the Chicago, Maine, there was a transfer of 1.5, and I'm trying to figure out. He says something general like survey, administrative costs, those kinds of things.
Yeah, but it cannot be $1.2 million. So I'm looking at it.
1.5.
It must be some improvements. I think Paul would, what I'm looking into the detail, kind of what I say, the Dempster Dodge, Chicago, Maine. Okay, so Chicago, Maine, it is the other improvement, which is a 1 point. Let's see, what did we spend? Contribution to the other funds, that's $1 million. Chicago fund. Let me see that entry. It must be this is the thing, I guess. Yes, I guess there was an expense on the capital side, which was funded out of 415, the capital improvement fund, since there was some work which was part of the CIP fund and some work which was a TIF eligible. So we spent we paid the entire bill out of fund 415, which is our capital improvement, and then this TIF reimbursed the capital improvement fund.
Right. So that would have been the water main project on Main Street, and maybe planning for the streetscape project that happens next year.
Correct, because I could recollect conversation with Lara that, yeah, this is one project. Some of them is eligible under the TIF, some of them under the coming out of CIP. So finally, yeah, based on their email, we transferred the money out of this TIF to the for this project.
Okay, thank you. Another one is the Howard Ridge. There was a transfer out of close to $1 million, 938,167. Do you know what?
That could be the same thing. Let me see. It is about the one of the water main, or I think that it is more on the.
No, they had a complete streetscape project.
Yeah, streetscape thing. So that is the entry where the money has been charged to Howard Ridge.
Okay.
So
and I'm sorry. No, West Evanston, it was about $500,000 that was transferred out. I was trying to figure out what that was for too.
Let's see.
493,821.
West Evanston is a 335 fund. You're looking at 21 West Evanston. I don't see any expenditure of that nature. What's the amount you said, Raphael?
It's 498,821 West Evanston.
I'll have to see that number. Let me like pull up the report. I'm looking in my detailed financials.
I'll tell you what page now.
Okay, so now let me get to the reports there. I'm looking at the West Evanston TIF. Okay, and West Evanston TIF here.
Yeah, so West Evanston TIF. If you go down to the page I'm looking at, is page 227. It shows transfer out 493,821. Housing and Economic Development transfer out of 407,637.
Oh, so the total, okay, so the
Yeah,
total expenditure is total, I mean, I'm looking at our audit report, 86,000 was like looked at an expenditure under housing and economic development, and 407,000 was a transfer out. I'll have to look at that one, see what it comes up with. Is there any other question while I can look up that under the system? Do you know, Paul, offhand?
Yeah, I'm trying to remember.
Must be for the improvement, because generally, and I'm glad, I mean, Raphael, you raised the point just for the all members. We have typically the projects, which would cover some TIF eligible cost and the other non-TIF eligible, but it would be a one project or one contract. So typically what we do is we pay the entire bill out of TIF, not the TIF fund, our capital improvement fund. And then we would ask the engineer to prorate the TIF portion and whatnot, and then we would transfer the money from TIF fund to the capital improvement fund to reimburse that.
So here's what I have in my notes, close to 421. I've got a CIP sewer rehab, so sewer rehabilitation in the second ward, but I don't know where specifically. These are just my notes. So that was 332,637. And in 2021, we did a workforce development grant with the Evanston Rebuilding Warehouse to help them build out the Hartree space into the space that it is today. That includes classrooms and an expanded retail component. And that was an $87,000 investment. So those two add up to 419,637.
So Paul and Attach, I'm just thinking it might be helpful if you have a footnote in the report that kind of let us know what those transfer out is, right? So we wouldn't have to ask you.
Sure. So are you referencing the state reports? Because we could probably do.
Yeah, the state report, yes.
Yeah, we could probably do a better job. We always struggle with the state reports because it's kind of an ugly template that, in the age of Instagram and TikTok, it's really kind of hard to look at these spreadsheets the way we have them, but they are what they are. So I'll take that suggestion to heart, and next year we'll come up with a better way of presenting it, because we'll have a lot to present next year on transfers for sure.
Thank you.
Yep.
If I could just add, we might be able to sort of break them out a little bit, but the templates only allow you to do certain things. So we can't create a footnote. They don't allow you to type anything in there. Well, we can break them out. Yeah.
Right. That's what I mean. I feel like
it's very restricted.
Even in my report, like if I scroll back up to the West Evanston TIF, I could even just break it down so it's clear on what the outbound or the outward expenditures were. So I appreciate that, Raphael.
Thank you. So I just, if no one else has any question, I just have I'm just wondering about any planned, I'm looking at the West Evanston TIF. It seems like it's got a pretty decent amount of money there. Any major project that you're thinking about and it's getting close to the end of its life? Any major project afoot?
I mean, Paul can answer on the economic development, but based on my conversation, because we just done with the budget with our engineering staff and the Dave Stonebeck who looks after water sewer, I mean, they have millions of dollars of projects. So, I mean, they say what kind of money you have available there. We have a lot of projects which would be eligible in that TIF area.
Right. And all I would add is, so that particular balance, what did we say the balance was?
I think it's 3.2 or something like that.
3.2?
Yeah, it's the fund balance based on.
Yeah, right. So there are some, yes, there are some projects that probably aren't reflected in that balance or fund balance yet, including an upcoming water main improvement on Dempster, sidewalk street improvements on Hartree and Greenleaf, kind of around your facility center, Raphael. Is that where your office is, by the way? Are you at Hartree?
No,
Okay.
no, we're McDaniels,
You're at the nicer place.
right by the canal.
Yeah, good for you. That's a much nicer location. Mason Park improvements. So we start chipping away at those expenses, whether they're engineering studies or actually building or construction. The Weavers project at Church and Dodge, the C&W Market acquisition, that knocks $500,000 off of it. There's a small $25,000 consulting fee that we're paying out of the West Evanston TIF for the citywide business district study. We're taking that from all the TIFs and our economic development fund. And then let's see, there's a lighting project. So there are a number of things: lead service line removal. And I'm just looking through. And then if we do if we're funding the helping fund the HODC Mount Pisgah mixed income affordable housing project, that's going to take that TIF balance almost to zero. Like in a matter of a few months, once we finalize these capital improvement projects, lead line, water mains, and Clarence and Wendy Weaver, and the HODC project. At the end of 2023, we're probably going to have zero left for investment until the next increment collection occurs.
You got a couple of questions here.
Yep.
I'll let you.
Oh, I thought you had more questions.
Oh, no, I'm saying
Well, I
you got
see
a
the
couple
hands.
of people questions. I'm just
So if that answers your question about West Evanston,
yes, it does.
okay. I'll ask. I don't know who can you identify yourself? I see no name has raised a hand.
No, there was a
Hi,
question.
this is
Mike-
Tina Pagan.
Hi, Tina.
Hi, how are you? I'm
Okay.
sorry I missed most of the conversation. What did you say was in the West Evanston TIF left?
Well, at the creation of this report, there's the cash balance of Hitesh, can you give me the number? Is it 3.2?
Okay,
Okay, but
So-
listen, but that's not, there are a number of encumbrances that bring that number way down.
right. I got that when
Okay,
I just
okay,
signed on.
Great.
So, anyway, as far as the HODC project, you haven't approved that. So based on your conversation, it looks like you're just gonna push that through regardless of whatever happens, because you've
No.
already commented that you're gonna
No,
remove
that's
the
just,
money.
no, that's just, I said it's encumbered, it's not allocated. So there is a possibility that the council would not support that project with TIF. And therefore we would have whatever amount that, we've kind of earmarked, right? It's a big project. It also includes some commercial on the ground floor. So there's a need for TIF there, but the council, just to reinforce what you said, the council has not decided that. And certainly staff doesn't have the authority to do it. It's an accounting game. We're just making sure that we're identifying the projects and putting costs to them.
Okay, I also wanted to say that how does that coincide with the 5/5 TIF? Because the people that have been getting money for the 5/5 TIF have been borrowing from the West Evanston TIF.
That's right.
And is there money in the 5/5 TIF? And also, when Councilmember Burns put together with you guys the 5/5 TIF, he mentioned help for small landlords, which of course I've never received anything. Again, here I am talking, and my building is actually in the 5/5 TIF. And how would I go about applying for this before all the money is gone?
Okay. So something that we mentioned during our first round of, we had a quick round of public comment, but we've reopened this up for general conversation. So I'll repeat what I said earlier for those who joined late. So Councilmember Burns is still working on, with Mayor Biss, appointing people to the TIF task forces, or I forget the exact name of them, but the TIF advisory committees. So that should hopefully be formed and ready to go sometime in early January. I can't put a deadline on it because I don't really know, but I anticipate it's close. So that group will help determine what is going to happen in terms of prioritizing the 5/5 TIF expenditures, including what you said, help for landlords. And I did mention that during my presentation of the 5/5 TIF, was that there's a significant number of small apartment buildings and housing in the TIF, because the purpose of, at the time when we created this under Councilmember or Alderman Ruth Simmons, that was one of the ideas here, was to support small landlords and property owners renovate their homes and keep homes affordable. That's the idea. So again, you have to continue to do what you do, Ms. Payton, and advocate for yourself and your community members and make sure that we're following our guidelines that we've established for that TIF. What was the second part of your question? Oh, the borrowing.
I wanted to know about how to apply because, I've been talking way longer than, you just give a C&W this amount of money. You just gave Soul and Smoke of $650. I mean, come on here. Are we really concerned about affordable housing, or are we just pretending again? Because I've been talking, as you know, for years and years and years and years. And I have a building that was shot up by 2 connection families, and no help from the mayor, who told a lie to me, because this is what it is a whole year later, that I was going to get help. And then my name is used as a way to get money or set up the 5/5 TIF to help small landlords keep a place affordable. And right now I have the whole building is sitting there because I have damages that I was promised help by the city, and I cannot, and lost rent from Connections clients who you support. The city of Evanston supports them with the money. And then I get stabbed in the back for trying to help homeless people. This is wrong, and I should have a way to apply for this money immediately. I have been knocked out of the landlord program for $15,000, which is a joke anyway. But as the committee reassigned things, that I am not qualified for that. My building is in the 5/5 TIF, and I have affordable units, and my name was used to create the 5/5 TIF. I need to be able to apply ASAP before all of these other people that just walked up and asked for money at the last minute. This is wrong, wrong, wrong. And I talked to, when Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee was here, I spoke to her about me being an affordable housing landlord. And she said, I have a mayor and council member and staff, and that you all should be helping me. This is ridiculous that I would have to go in for all across the nation in order for someone to help me, who I've been providing for over 50 years, affordable units. This is wrong. And what are you going to do about this? Why you sitting here passing a restaurant $650,000 in TIF money before affordable housing? What you're saying is a farce. And every time I talk, oh, Tina, in a month or so, we'll have it. Well, how many months is that? Which year are you talking about? It's not happening. You're just making up stories every time. Why you cannot give me money that is owed to me. This was wrong what happened to me. And you all are sitting there passing restaurants and stores way after me. They just come up and ask for money. And regardless of how you feel about me, I thought the goal was to provide affordable units for homeless people, for bankrupt people, for evicted people. But it doesn't look like it. What are you going to do? Put them in the restaurant for $650,000? It's wrong.
Okay. So Ms. Payton, thank you for your input as always. You and I have talked about this over the years. Not all of the members of the council are attending today. There are some. And I'll make sure that everyone gets access to this video afterwards. So, and the minutes so people can hear your comments. I will say that again, the mayor and Councilmember Burns, through whatever, there's a TIF advisory application process, and I'm sending them a message to get that to me so I can send it out to all of you. Once that's formed, there should be the next step after that will be to sit down and define how we're going to define either an application. It would have to be an application process for the affordable housing component of it. And I hear what you're saying. Yes, it does. It does feel like a couple of businesses have stepped forward, and whether it's the Emerson and Jackson project or Soul and Smoke, I can't respond to that. All I can say is I hear what you're saying, and let's see what we can do to expedite getting the TIF advisory committee up and running like we promised when we created it, and get the ball rolling on it. As a quick aside, we don't know yet how much has come into the 5/5 TIF, again, because of the Cook County assessor Board of Review situation that resulted in delay of collections. But we're going to know that hopefully by the end of January. Irina, is that correct? End of January?
Yes.
That's a good estimate. So we'll have our first collection, the 2022 fall collection will come in at the end of January. And then let's hope at the end of April, we'll have our first of 2023, and we'll have or May, and we'll have a good chunk of that first wave of money for the 5/5 TIF. Ms. Cannon, how are you? I see your hand is up. Darlene Cannon. And if you're talking, you're going to have to unmute yourself. I'm sorry that I didn't stress that.
You just spoke to her.
Okay. Yes. Hi, I'm
There we
here.
go.
Thank you. So I have a couple of things to say, just to align with what Tina said. We gave $50,000 to the Main Street businesses, no questions asked. But affordable housing is supposed to be one of our goals, but we're not helping small landlords. And I think that, one of the things that Tina is, upset about, and I would be upset about it too, is that there were so many stipulations that were put into the application process for small landlords. And were there stipulations put in when you gave $50,000 to businesses on Main Street because of the sewer repair? My next thing is that with all the money that is, going out the door, are we putting in clawbacks for these TIFs so that, because with the kind of money that we're giving out, to ensure that they don't sell the properties like what happened with Valley, because Valley, they did improve the mall, but they made a pretty penny off of our money. What do we have in place to ensure that doesn't happen? And just like, even with Chicken and Waffles, we gave them money and they kind of walked away with that too, or I don't know, maybe that was CBG funds, I forget. And are we gonna know what is the estimated amount of taxes that we're expecting in each year for each fund? Whether it's the 5/5, the Dempster Dodge, so forth, or are they put together as one, or what? And yeah, it does concern me. My last comment is that it does concern me that we don't have a TIF advisory board, because I think it was like last year, year before, that we talked about that we were gonna create a TIF advisory board. And here we are going into 2023 and we still don't have one. So,
Yeah, thank you. So,
Thank you.
couple of quick responses on, so chicken and waffles, if you look at the TIF map, it was not in the TIF. I believe at the time we used general economic development funds. It was, at the time there was a $2 million budget for that fund. And we lent $200,000. It was underwritten by First Bank and Trust. They also lent $200,000, and the business itself brought in the remainder, which I think was 400. That business failed, but the building was renovated and it's currently operating as a restaurant still. So, and then they also they ended up paying us back 60,000 of the 200. So essentially, the city ended up granting $140,000 for the what is now Cobble House Restaurant. So that deal ended up working out okay for us, but I definitely understand what you're saying, Ms. Cannon. Just just trying to be careful, being good stewards of public dollars. And I said earlier on, before you were on the call and during the introductory comments, when I was going through each of the TIFs, yeah, we learned a lesson on Dempster Dodge. I think in 2012, when Dominic's closed and the center was over 50% vacant, staff and some members of the council were really concerned that that strip mall would become a bigger eyesore than it kind of already is. It's not the prettiest looking shopping center. So we put that TIF in place to have an incentive to perhaps renovate and redevelop the site for maybe like a town center for the West End that included some new housing and the like. That didn't happen because Valley came to the rescue and took over Dominic's, and then they took a different business model approach, which is to renovate the center. And I don't think anybody anticipated over a 6-year period that property would essentially almost triple in value, if my numbers are right. So one lesson learned is that we're in future deals, we are going to, and again, I give credit to Councilmember Kelly and her colleagues for convincing us that we need to share in the upside on sales like that. So that's part of the clawback. But I will say, and I'm wrapping up my comments, is that we've always had clawbacks, right? Like if public money is used and you don't deliver on the promise of whatever that public benefit is, or if you close or sell the business for a different type of use, that we have a clawback where we get some of that money back. But this particular case at Dempster and Dodge, that we didn't know what we didn't know, and that was a remarkable profit that the Valley people made, and we should as a public body make sure that we're sharing in the upside of that. So those are all my responses to that. If there's something I missed, let me know. Councilmember Harris has her hand raised. I'd like to call on her. Thank you. And if you're speaking, you're on mute. I'm sorry. Can anybody hear Councilmember Harris? I can't hear her. Even though you're not muted. You may have to do the thing where you call in. Or check your F4 button, make sure the microphone isn't turned off. All right, while we wait for Councilmember Harris to rejoin us, are there other comments or questions?
I did have one more question.
Okay.
Have we ever had a situation where we've taken money back from a TIF? I mean, from people we funded and we've, taken money back?
Like a clawback, like
Yeah.
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 our volume of deals like that is actually pretty thin. Like there aren't a lot. I think off the top of my head, I can't think of a case where there was an investment. If somebody could back me up on this, an investment in a TIF project where the project failed or failed to deliver. That doesn't mean we're perfect. I mean, I can't think of one offhand where we've had to enforce a clawback. I can think of, I don't know. I'd have to go back and research all of our deals. I'd be glad to do that for you though.
What happened to the place next to Peckish Pig? They received money from you all. They also received rent. You own the space at the old police outpost. They received money from you all. They also received to rent the place. And
Yes.
after 8 months, they walked away from their lease, and then they still owed you the money back. That's wrong
Yeah.
too. And
No,
then
that is wrong.
they're still allowed to continue to run their business over on isn't that the same people that own Davis and
Davis.
Chicago Avenue? And
Yeah,
there's
Davis.
and then you all still give them money, and then you bypass me. It's wrong all around. That is, you all just throwing money out like water.
I'll come back to Miss Payton in a second. Councilmember Harris has a microphone now.
Yes, I've resurfaced. Sorry
Thank
about
you.
that. Thank you all so much for all being here and learning. We're all learning some new things. As Paul has mentioned, with me being new to the council, I've been playing catch up, but we've had a lot of great discussions about how that TIF is going to look and what we want to do with it, making sure paybacks are happening, making sure that we're doing the right things with our consumer dollars and our constituents. And I'm glad, well, as Paul mentioned to me, that they are working on the council, and we'll make sure that that gets up and running soon so that there is a voice in the community for that. Tina, we've talked, and I have a meeting on the books with Sarah about understanding your situation. So I have met with you, and I am working with the city to get a better understanding of what's going on. What's important, as we've been talking about, as Paul has done a great job of talking about, is making sure that we're fiscally sound, that we're making sure that while we're trying to do the right thing by businesses and organizations, that we're doing right by our constituents in our city and making sure our dollars are used appropriately. And if not, that we get them back, as we've mentioned. So I'm glad that I was on this call to hear more of the concerns from our body, and we will move those forward. Being a council member, it is my responsibility to make sure we move those concerns forward and that we are hearing from everybody, good and bad. So I appreciate everybody being on the call. Thank you, Paul.
Welcome. Are there any other questions or comments or discussion items?
Yeah, I just wanted to follow up on your chat comment. If you could explain more about your answer regarding the recession.
Yes.
And how that could impact
Sure.
any of these TIFs.
Mr. Vasilko had written in the chat, if you hadn't seen it, what kind of impact would a recession like the one that is predicted for 2023 and 2024, perhaps, how would that impact the TIF? And the impact all of our TIFs. Let me put it that way. And my response really is to think of the most drastic example we have of this, which is the West Evanston TIF. If you remember when I presented, you probably don't, but it was created in 2005. And if you remember, that was the peak of the market. And then there was a really borderline depression that occurred in the year or two afterwards. So like property owners, when I bought my condo in Chicago in 2005, the value, I never recovered from that. Like the day I sold it, I wrote a check at closing to get out of it instead of receiving one. My parents taught me you buy real estate, you get money when you sell. I paid. So that's kind of what happened in the West Evanston TIF. We created the TIF at really high property values, and then the market tanked. So for years, there was zero increment coming into that TIF district because the frozen base value of that TIF was higher than the actual property values. Usually what happens is over time, property values go up and you collect that increment into the TIF district. So that's an extreme example to demonstrate that, yeah, if a recession occurs, you might feel it a year or two later on the TIF because when the property is reassessed, it might be reassessed at a lower value. Let's hope that's not the case. That would be a bigger problem for all of us, bigger than the TIF. But since we are focused on TIF, it could have mitigating effect on how much increment we collect. So, we're again, this is really more of a conversation that we have around the 5/5 TIF, because if we're making projections on something that we know today has zero in it, we're trying to project out, we can't make any plans until we know what that looks like. But the existing TIFs, we're only making decisions right now kind of based on short term, what are our cash balances. And frankly, not to go on too much longer of a tangent, but Howard Street has a project or two left in it, perhaps, based on there's only a few years left and there's a small balance available. West Evanston has a few years left. Dempster Dodge, we're not doing any projects in because it's a shopping center that doesn't need us. So we got to figure out a long-term plan for that. I would say hold steady because we don't know in 5 years what the retail world looks like, and we might need to do that plan we talked about doing in 2012. And then which TIF am I missing? I'm missing 5/5, which has zero in it, but we're hoping to invest a lot of into mixed income affordable housing. So I don't know, that I'm just pontificating and prognosticating, so to speak, about what a recession could do. But I'm also trying to put it in the context of we don't have a lot in the pipeline that we're dreaming up out of these TIFs in its current form. There would have to be a conversation about, either I'll stop there because there's all kinds of hypotheticals we talk about. Did I hear somebody else about to ask a question?
Yeah, I just have one more comment. So I want to know, as you know, I've been speaking for many, many, many years, and the city has given me zero help. And how does a project, because based on your comments, and we're pretty much sure that HODC will get in front of me. Now, this project was not in front of me, and it's going to be in front of me and has situations about housing. Now, how are they allowed to apply based on housing, but I'm not? And then also C&W, one of the comments was in order to push that through is there was going to be 6 affordable units. Well, how does that get in front of me too? They didn't. How do they apply? Why am I not allowed to apply for this remaining money? And then next year you'll say, well, Tina, we're out of funds. Sorry. How does that happen? They're doing affordable units. HODC is doing, quote, affordable units. It'll be mixed. How do they get in front of me? And I've been talking all this time. Somehow you never have an application for me, but you have an application for everybody else. I don't see, and this is what I wanted to say.
They're in the West.
Wait, just hear me. Just hear me for one more second.
Go ahead.
So this is what it's always some kind of stipulation. Tina, you have to have affordable units for 25 years or whatever. I'm already doing it, so I don't know why you're saying this. And also, do you tell the restaurant, did you tell Soul and Smoke, you got $650,000 in TIF money? Do you have to have a soup kitchen 3 times a week in order to sustain for 25 years under the TIF? No, you don't have any stipulations on these people except me. And then you don't even give me an opportunity to apply. You just fake news all the time. this is wrong. I'm going to say again that you allow these people to step in front of me. And I've been saying, and you know, as long as you've had a job there, Paul, especially you know what I'm saying, I have been in front of that camera and I've been pushing for affordable housing. And what do you think? And what, like I said, regardless of how you feel about me, the goal I thought was to provide affordable units to people. So in order to help me continue, you're going to help me do what is right. Thank you.
Thanks. I just wanted, we're going to be wrapping up the Joint Review Board in a moment. I do see there's a couple more hands up. I just want to stress again that for Ms. Payton, the 5/5 TIF, the C&W and HODC are on the West Evanston TIF. HODC has kind of been a long-term plan, as you're aware. But let's, the 5/5
not longer than me, not longer than me. C&W, Soul and Smoke, they didn't even exist before me.
But I'm letting you know that those funding sources are in the West Evanston TIF. So
it doesn't matter what TIF. You just let, who did you just let? Rebuilder Evanston or whatever they call themselves now. You just let them borrow money from use the 5/5 TIF and borrow from the West. Somebody you let borrow money. Who was that? You know who I'm saying?
Yeah, I'll tell you. It was Soul and Smoke borrow. They ported money from, when I say they, the city council approved a port from the West Evanston TIF to the 5/5 TIF.
Yeah, so that's okay though.
Right?
You and you're saying they've been talking longer than me. You saying this is a restaurant. You're not concerned about affordable housing just by that right there. You're telling so you admitted right here on the camera that you allowed Soul and Smoke, a restaurant, to borrow from the West Evanston TIF from the 5/5, but you won't let me do the same thing. That is called two-face.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Mr. Vasilko, one last question.
Well, it's really not a question. I gotta stick up for Tina because I've heard her repeat this for years. I can't remember when I first heard it. And she gets nowhere. And, you know, I've got no skin in this game, but it seems completely unfair and I don't understand it. I've heard all the promises along the way. Equally unfair, I think, is, you know, you mentioned giving $650K to a restaurant where this other group that asked for some funding, Bookends, a bookstore, the bookstore of all bookstores, you know, they asked for something much less, and that they got even less than that. They got 80,000. They asked for 450. So it always seems to be a bit of a pick and choose winners and losers is what happens with whatever happens behind the scenes. Those decisions, I don't know how they're made, but I know they're not fair. And Tina gets the short end of the stick all the time. And this Bookends group, they got the short end as well. Thank you very much.
Okay, any other 2021 annual Joint Review Board meeting? Okay, Ms. Conley, and then we'll wrap it up unless there are board members who have comments or questions. Ms. Conley, go ahead.
I just want to know what the process is going to be in terms of returning money that was ported to the 5/5 TIF back over to the West End TIF. Like, can you answer that, or is there a process by which that has to happen? What do we need to know as a community on that?
Sure. If excuse me. So the way that would happen is simply it's just an accounting maneuver. You shift the money from one TIF to the other, assuming that that's what the city council wants to do. And I imagine that's the case. I think that's the way it was presented. You can legally port from one to the other, and that's the end of the conversation. If the community and the city council want to move that money back from one TIF to the other, then we do that. And that's really, there's no formal mechanism for that. That's simply, it's like any fund at the city. If, we committed using the West Evanston TIF to lend to I think that's the way it was presented, to the 5/5 TIF. I think if you look at the record, it says that we're borrowing from it to give to these projects that had an urgent need. So I would think that the council would want that to transfer back, and that's up to them. And the way to do it is you initiate the transfer internally. It's really not, there isn't a formal process.
Is there money in the 5/5 TIF that could be returned now?
Not today. That we'll know at the end of January when the money flows in, and then it flows again like twice a year, like your tax bill. Money will start coming into the 5/5 TIF. We were supposed to collect in October. Remember the tax bill fiasco. Your taxes are due on December 31st. That money will flow, and we'll know how much is coming into the 5/5 TIF, and we'll have a complete picture of it at the end of January. Okay, any board members have any final comments or questions? Okay, thank you all. There are a number of questions and suggestions from this on the communication side that I hope to begin slowly implementing over the next few months. Raphael, are you coming back on, or are you just coming on to say goodbye? You look like you do. Okay.
Okay, Paul, you have to officially close the meeting.
Yeah, so I was going to go back to the agenda quick. And thank you. I do want to say thank you to the community for joining and advocating as you do in our community. It's important. And thanks for the elected officials who joined today. We only do these once a year, or when we create TIFs, so it's important for us to learn from each other while we go through it. And thanks to the community members who raised concerns about where the Joint Review Board agenda was posted. It was mildly confusing. We're going to create its own section for next year's posting. And then I promise you, I commit today that we will not have a mad scramble doodle poll next year for a date. We'll start much earlier. We'll have our reports done earlier, and hopefully all of the drama of this year's tax reporting will be behind us. So I want to sign off, but Seidenberg, do you have an official comment, or do you want to?
Oh, no, sorry. No.
Okay. So I am going to, I guess, officially request, a motion to adjourn. Thank you. Any second to that? Thank you. All in favor of adjourning?
Aye.
Thank you. Have a nice holiday or holidays, everybody, and we'll communicate throughout the year. Thank you.
You too,
Bye-bye.
Paul. Thank you.
Thanks. Bob, did you want to talk? No.
Good job, Paul, trying to keep us together.
You're welcome.
I know.
Thank you.
Yeah.